We'll now call the February 28, 2022 Board of Trustees regular meeting to order. Entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion carries. Entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes. Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. I'm sorry. Okay, that motion carries. Entertain a motion to go into executive session. Okay, moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Waters. We ask those of you that's not a part of the executive session, if you would please excuse yourself at this time. We will call you upon our re-entering into open session. Hey, we're gonna reconvene back into open session. We will now reconvene back into open session. And as we begin today's meeting, I would like to share some exciting news. The Military Magnet girls basketball team won the semifinals championship over the weekend and will play for the state championship this Friday at noon at USC Aiken. We are so proud of our Military Magnet Academy girls team and wish them the best of luck as they compete for the state title. On a more sober note, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the challenge and conflict occurring in the Ukraine. Our thoughts and prayers and hearts are with our Ukrainian kids, students, and families for their country and their loved ones. Board members and members of the audience, I sadly must announce the passing of 3 individuals this month. The first was an outstanding educator, historian, former CCSD board member, and pillar of our community, Ms. Liz Alston. Ms. Alston was a CCSD educator and former chair of the board. I must also announce the passing of one of our longtime staff members, Ms. Donna Fry. Ms. Fry was the nurse at Midland Park Primary for the last 10 years and was the nurse at Mary Ford prior to her time at Midland. She served all of the children she served, and she will be missed dearly. Lastly, it is with profound sadness that I share the loss of North Charleston High School student, Zymir Moody. The loss of life, especially that of a child, is so very tragic. We mourn the loss of this bright light and share in the sorrow his loved ones are experiencing. We extend our deepest condolences to these 3 individual families, friends, and school communities, and pray for strength and comfort for them in the weeks and months to come. Please join me in prayer as we remember Ms. Liz Alston, Ms. Donna Fry, and Zymir. In your hands, O Lord, we humbly entrust our brothers and sisters. In this life, you embrace them with your tender love. Deliver them now from every evil and bid them eternal rest. The old order has passed away. Welcome them into paradise, where there be no more sorrow, no weeping or pain, but fullness of peace and joy with your Son and the Holy Spirit forever. Amen. May we now pause for a moment of silence. We ask that you now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag as Ms. Waters will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go into the actions on the executive session item, I'm going to ask the pleasure of the board if we would move item 10A up for discussion at this time. Is there any objection?
Yes,
That we move item 10A up for discussion? Dr. French?
I'm concerned that we might get information during the superintendent's report that might
I
wait.
can't hear you, Dr. French.
I'm concerned that we would be missing information that might be provided during the superintendent's report if we move it up to a vote at this time.
Is there any other objection?
We make it as a motion and a vote, or does it just need to be by consent?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, get it back to that.
they're just moving it to take act, to discuss that next.
Right.
Okay, yep, that's.
Is there any other? All right, hearing none, let us move to item 10A.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend policy ADD face covering in the mask requirement and refer the policy back to the policy liaison and legal team for review. Second.
That motion was made by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Hedrick. Are there any discussions? Dr. French?
Would it be possible to ask Mr. Barrow to provide any pertinent information from the new CDC guidelines?
Absolutely.
So I'll cover a lot of different information here, and I'll put it out on the table, most of which I was going to present in the major portion, and I'll just call out what is pertinent. So we first look at the current ratings metrics from DHEC and from CDC for incident rates as well as percent positive. The overall rating for all of the counties in South Carolina is medium at this point. Charleston obviously is one of those counties. The CDC, which uses a 7-day running total instead of 14-day, which is DHEC, which would result in a more rapid decline in the numbers when you're coming off of a peak like Omicron. Today, the numbers was 134, which is still high. 100 would put it down into the substantial category. And the positivity rate is 5.6, which is moderate, which is the third level down from the top. If you look at the mask mandate website for CDC, which is a different site than the typical county, the county metric that we've been following, they're now using low, medium, and high, and they're saying that Charleston County is in the medium range for mask mandates. I will point out that the vaccination rate for Charleston County, Dr. French shared some information with me earlier. It's 68.6 for Charleston County for all those greater than 5 years old. It's 72% for 18 years and older. That is a pretty substantial number for vaccination rate, so that's looking pretty good. If I can bounce back to the masks discussion specifically, CDC put out guidance on the 25th that lifted the mask mandate on public buses. That was followed by a DHEC, SDE, South Carolina Department of Ed memo that came out. We got that this morning, came out over the weekend, that lifts the mask mandate on buses as well. So that's kind of a consolidation of all the information we've got so far.
Okay, Dr. French?
So that new categorization that looks at incidence rate and hospitalization rates. So we're in medium, and at that metric, that means that the CDC does not recommend mandatory masking inside buildings, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I was glad to see the vaccination rates have gone up for fully vaccinated. That's
Thank you
really
for
good
sharing those.
news.
All right, is there any further questions?
Oh,
Okay, the motion
can
I'm
I
sorry,
ask-
Dr. French?
I ask the board for any input about what they want us to review on the policy? All right. One thing that I consider is that if we lift the mask mandate, how will we deal with any changes in incidence rate within our schools? Like, for instance, if we start to see over some period of time, either if it were to happen immediately, if we had an increase in our school system, would we consider coming back to review the mask again? Or do we need to be thinking about whether or not we could have another variant coming through? I guess I just want a little bit of guidance about what you want me to do as policy liaison.
So Reverend Matt,
Okay, Ms. Coates?
having given that no thought whatsoever, because we haven't reached that point, I would think that if that point happens, the policy liaison would probably want to reach out to the board members and ask that question.
Okay, any further comments?
I'd like to
Dr.
suggest,
Burton?
yes, sir. I'd like to suggest that Dr. French convene with Ms. Nitz and Mr. Brewery to further discuss the issue on the mask mandate.
I don't think that should happen outside of the policy committee process. That's why we have it.
Ms. Darby, let's, go ahead.
So just to address your question, Dr. French, I would think, obviously, if next week there was a huge increase or a variant, I think the board could come back and consider and make a decision about masks. Personally, I think looking at what the changes with DHEC and CDC and the different recommendations that they're making now that we're 2 years into this, that having us tweak that policy a bit so that we can be more nimble with the changes and the recommendations they're making. And then, with keeping the things that we are keeping in place on contact tracing and stuff. So I just think the mask policy, we need to update it based on changes from the medical groups that we're hearing. And then, we can always get together and make a decision about, take a vote on whether if we needed to reinstitute masks. I don't think we're going to. I'm hoping we're not going to have to, but we could.
Yeah, I think that the numbers are going in the right direction. Just to Ms. Coates' point, when I as policy liaison meet with legal, it is not unusual for us to bring staff that have expertise in the area of the policy.
Which is why I said it's covered in the policy liaison process. We don't need to sit here as a board and make such a recommendation. That is what we
Okay.
do.
Well, I just wanted to make sure it was clear to the public. Thank you.
So something of this magnitude will be discussed at whenever it is taken to the committee to hold to discuss what that policy will reflect. So there's not an opportunity. I mean, it's not now that we would want to try to come up with what the policy or changes will be. But however, there's a motion on the floor that has been moved and seconded to suspend policy ADD, face covering, and the mask requirement, and refer the policy back to policy liaison in legal team for review. There being no further questions, we ask that you now please cast your vote. Okay, can you make sure that Ms. Coakley is in or has referred back to the? Julie, hold 1 second before. Coakley. She just voted? Okay, thank you. Okay. Everyone has cast their vote. Okay, that motion passes. We're going to item 4A. Let's see. Yes, item 4A, personnel matter, breach of contract. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the forwarding of a formal complaint to the South Carolina Department of Education related to the attached contract teacher.
Second.
Been moved and second, moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 4B.
I move to approve forwarding of the formal complaint to South Carolina Department of Education related to the attached contract teacher.
Moved by Ms. Coates, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 4C.
I've got a motion. I'd like to move that we list the
D?
prop,
Wait, C or E?
C,
4C.
District
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I move that we list the property on the MLS for 90 days.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates and Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes. Item 4D.
I move to approve negotiation of real estate purchase contract.
May I make a friendly amendment?
Depends on what friendly amendment is, but
Um,
probably.
Following the staff recommendation not to exceed 4.1 million.
Okay, I think that's a good friendly amendment. Yes, thank you for catching that. So motion to
So I
approve
would second.
negotiation of real estate purchase contract not to exceed 4.1 million. Thank you.
Okay. Are we waiting on something?
Nope, sorry, me.
Okay.
Okay. Good, I should, sorry.
Okay, that motion passes. Item 4E.
I move that we allow the students to stay tuition free until the end of the school year.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote.
And that's 2 students, right?
Yep, yeah, I said
Okay.
students.
Okay.
It should be that, on that one, Julie, it should be students, but
Okay, that motion passes. Item 4F.
I move to allow the student to remain tuition free until the end of the school year.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes. Item 4G.
I have a motion. I'd like to move to overturn the constituent board decision and place the student at Turning Point Academy.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Dr. French?
Would that also, would that also mean that they are in the ADAPT program?
I think that
It's nothing to do
we
with.
were told that Ms. Coker was going to reach out to that student, that family, to see how the ADAPT program could meet their needs.
Any further questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item, hang on, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Item 4H,
I move that we uphold the constituent board's decision.
is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Dr. French. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, the motion passes. Item 4I,
I move that we overturn the constituent board decision and place the student at Turning Point Academy. And because we didn't during the executive session, ask the Department of Alternative Programs to assess ADAPT services.
Second.
moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 4J,
I move to approve the recommendation of the D9 constituent board to fill the vacant seat on the board.
Second.
moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes.
Reverend.
Before we go into special recognition, I just want to go back to clarify item 10A on the policy face covering. That will take effect tomorrow. So students will not be required, or staff, or there will not be a mandate requirement starting tomorrow. So with that vote that was just gathered, I just want to make that clarifying statement. All right.
Would you like to congratulate the new D9 constituent board member?
Yeah, is she read it?
I don't know. You'd say the name.
Yeah, so that vote that was just cast for the D9 constituent board vacancy, that individual, given that the vote has been cast, is now Ms. Cheryl Glover. Congratulations to her in filling that vacancy. We'll now go into special recognition. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman Mack, Vice Chair Waters, Board of Trustee members, Mr. Kennedy. This evening for special recognition, we are so excited and honored to bring reference to and present to you several outstanding educators and students. First, we'd like to ask Mr. Harold Sanders to come forward. Mr. Sanders is a 21st century program officer with expanded learning, and he's here in person with us this evening. Mr. Sanders was recently selected as one of the inaugural participants in the Riley Institute's South Carolina After School Leaders Empowered, also known as SCALE Fellowship. He's one of only 20 applicants chosen for this program, which was launched with a week-long intensive on Furman's campus last week. Each year for the next 3 years, SCALE will convene additional diverse cohorts of emerging summer and after-school learning leaders, providing them with the resources they need to build strong partnerships, secure funding, design, and scale effective programming. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Sanders on his selection to this exciting new program. Next, we'd like to recognize and honor another one of our outstanding educators, Ms. Sharon Beeson. She was here and she had to leave for another school-related event. She was here along with the school's instructional coach, Ms. Jennifer Savage. Ms. Beeson is an upper elementary educator and directress of James Simmons Montessori School and one of only 4 recipients nationally of the McGraw-Hill Alex All-Star Educator Award for 2022. Alex, also known as Assessment and Learning and Knowledge Spaces, is a course assistant that helps math and chemistry educators forge constructive learning paths for students, blending personalized modules with instructor-driven assignments. Ms. Beeson uses the program to get a detailed view of her students' skills and where they need support. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Beeson in her absence. Here comes the champ. Thank you. We're so excited to have Ms. Prasanna Samuel. She is the 3-time Spelling Bee winner for Charleston County School District. Let's give her a round of applause. She's won the CCSD Spelling Bee not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row. She joins us this evening with her family. Her dad is taking pictures, and her principal, C.E. Williams principal, Kevin Smith. She competed last month alongside 42 other school spelling bee winners from 5th to 8th grade to capture the district title. She will advance to the regional Spellbound competition where she will compete for the regional title and the opportunity to advance to the 2022 Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. with over 200 other competitors. What an accomplishment. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you. Next, we'll have Mr. Bryant Nowicki. Today we have with us Wando High School JRTC cadet Bryant Nowicki and Wando High School Air Force JROTC instructor Major John Faris here in person. Did I say that? Thank you. Here in person. Dr. F was on, I'm not sure if she was going to try to join back in, but Mr. Nowicki was recently selected as a 2021-2022 J100 Character and Leadership Scholarship recipient. Only 100 scholarships were awarded this year across the nation. Each cadet that accepts a scholarship does so in pursuit of a commission in the U.S. Air Force or Space Force. Cadet Nowicki was nominated by his instructor and passed a series of rigorous interviews with a panel of active duty officers, enlisted and federal civilian members of the Air Force. The J100 Character Scholarship pays for tuition, books, a monthly stipend, travel to any university, and housing. Please let's join me in congratulating JRTC Cadet Bryant Nowicki on his fantastic accomplishment. For our final recognition this evening, we'd like to honor 2 music educators from the School of the Arts. Mr. Christopher, who are not here, but they may be on Zoom. Mr. Christopher Shelby and Kenneth Turner. Dr. Shelby and SOA Principal Dr. Shannon Cook are joining us this evening via Zoom. Unfortunately, Mr. Turner is unavailable to join us as he is currently leading a rehearsal, but sends his gratitude for the recognition. Earlier this month at a professional development conference, the South Carolina Music Educator Association honored both Dr. Shelby and Mr. Turner for their outstanding contributions to music education. Dr. Shelby is School of the Arts High School orchestra director and was named to the SCMEA Hall of Fame. Under his direction, the orchestra students performed at the 2019 Midwest Clinic and won the 2016 ASTA National Orchestra Festival's top award of Grand Champion in the competitive public school division. Mr. Turner is School of the Arts High School Band Director and was awarded the National Band Association's Citation of Excellence Award. Under Mr. Turner's direction, the SOA Wind Ensemble was a featured performing ensemble at the 2022 SCMEA In-Service Conference, and both of his SOA jazz bands received a Superior with Distinction at the SCBDA State Jazz Performance Assessment. The jazz band at SOA also recently placed more students in the South Carolina All-State Jazz Band than any other school in the state. Please join me in congratulating these two educators on the outstanding accomplishments and recent honors. Thank you, thank you. And now, in recognition of Black History Month, we'd like to highlight events that occurred across the district at some of our schools. At Baptist Hill High School, student artists and student musicians performed during a school-wide ceremony for students and staff. At Dunston Elementary School, an African-American dance and drum performance group treated students to an exciting treat. The interactive performance gave students and staff the opportunity to learn to play an assortment of drums and learn intricate African dance steps. At Latson Elementary School, Kaleidoscope students participated in a Black History Month art contest hosted by the after-school program to commemorate and celebrate Black History Month. Latson students won 3 out of 4 categories. At Lambs Elementary School, CCSD staff partnered with Joint Base Charleston to read to students. I think you might know the gentleman in the photograph, interim superintendent, Mr. Kennedy was a part of that celebration, and the students so enjoyed it. At North Charleston Elementary School, students at North Charleston were treated to an African dance troupe and drum performance. Parents were invited to the performance as well and treated to a soup bowl, which was a taste test of soup recipes made by staff for a friendly competition. And now we'd like to ask the family of Miss Elizabeth Liz Hunt Alston to please stand and join me. Reverend Mack. As we close out Black History Month, we have a very special recognition. We would like to take a moment to honor the life and contributions to education in Charleston, South Carolina, and the nation by the late Elizabeth Hunt Alston, educator, historian, and former CCSD board chair. Throughout the numerous outstanding accomplishments in her life, Mrs. Alston was a trailblazer in Charleston, not by only being the first individual to do or accomplish something, but often as doing so as the first African-American female as well. For instance, Ms. Alston was the first African-American to serve as the chair of the City of Charleston Tourism Commission. She was also the first African-American female to serve as a principal at a high school in Charleston County, and the first African-American female to serve as the chair of the Charleston County School Board. She was the first ethnic coordinator for Charleston County School District, and she taught the first Black history course in Charleston County schools, as well as at Trident Technical College. She also wrote the Black history section in the Charleston Tour Guide Manual and authored the Ethnic History of Charleston County, South Carolina's Contribution to American History in 2021. In addition to her service as an educator in the district, Ms. Alston served on and led numerous boards throughout the Charleston area, including the International African American Museum, Charleston Tourism Commission, Roper St. Francis Memorial Hospital, the T.C. Drayton Community Center, and those are just a few. Most recently, Ms. Alston served as the archivist and historian at Emmanuel AME Church. Her beautiful life was celebrated last week, and we know that she would be greatly missed by all. Please join me in recognizing Ms. Alston for her extraordinary contributions to Charleston County School District and the greater community.
Mr. Alston, words cannot begin to express, but definitely our heartfelt sympathy continue to go to you and to your family. Ms. Liz Alston was definitely a trailblazer, without a doubt. I do have to say, though, that she was my high school principal. Not only was she my high school principal, but it was my first time ever in my career in high school or in school that I was suspended. Ms. Alston gave me my first one-day suspension in high school. However, without a doubt, Ms. Alston was definitely, as indicated, a trailblazer, in her historian history was well received. And as she served this county, particularly on the school board, she did an amazing job reaching out and extending services and betterment for students. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees for Charleston County School District and the staff, and along with our interim superintendent, Don Kennedy, we'd like to present this to you in memory of your wife and a trailblazer that indeed serviced the Charleston County School District, Miss Elizabeth Liz Hunt Alston. Let me show it to the board right quick. That's a crystal gavel. Thank you.
Reverend Mack, that concludes the special recognition as well as recognition for Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time now, Ms. Waters, we will go into public comments.
Thank you, Reverend Mack. Today we have several in-person comments ranging from, well, covering several different topics. And so I believe that Jamie Cooper is in the room.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, superintendent, CCSD leaders, and guests. My name is Jamie Cooper, and I serve as the CEO of Communities and Schools of South Carolina. The mission of Communities and Schools is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. We accomplish this mission through the placement of full-time staff embedded in schools, delivering 3 tiers of service: whole school supports, small group interventions, and one-on-one case management. This evidence-based model leads to success in our priority outcomes of attendance, behavior, and coursework. As a national network, Community and Schools is the largest provider of integrated student supports in the country. In South Carolina, we are a leading provider of wraparound services for students. We began services here in Charleston County School District with Clark Academy in 1990. And today serve students and families in 4 CCSD feeder systems: Johns Island, the Downtown Peninsula, and both feeder systems in North Charleston. We are in unprecedented times within education as we all strive to meet the social, emotional, mental, and academic needs of all students. This is a monumental task that can only be accomplished together. I want to thank you for allowing Communities and Schools to be a collaborative partner in this endeavor. Thank you for trusting us with schools throughout the district as we provide support to students and families. It has been over 30 years since we first began our partnership with CCSD, and we look forward to supporting your vision for the students and families of Charleston County any way we can for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maggie Marlowe.
Hi, I'm Maggie Marlowe.
I am here today to, one, just kind of remind the board of several things. I have here your oath of office that I'm going to read. You guys took this oath of office on the November 16th of 2020, and it does say, I do solemnly swear to affirm that I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state to exercise the duties of this office to which I have been elected or appointed, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties therefore and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the state and the United States, so help me God. With that said, and I know that you guys just suspended policy ADD, which I appreciate, but with the implementation of policy ADD on September 16th of 2021, you guys put through mask enforcers. And I have right here the FOIA receipt of all mask enforcers through Charleston County. With that, these mask enforcers were paid with funds outside of the state, which was in congruence with the proviso at the time. I also have here 110 affidavits and personal accounts from parents of the rollout of that policy. So between September 16th and September 28th, prior to the proviso being put on hold by a federal judge, you guys were in direct violation of the law. There are multiple accounts of teachers, administrative, and staff throughout CCSD that are not a part of your paid mask enforcers in that policy. And you guys owe these parents whose students went through being discriminated against, being segregated, not being allowed phone calls to their parents when being put in separate rooms, and being forced to put a mask on against the law for those 12 days, an apology. Thank you. Next, we'll have Victoria Finneran.
For the past 2 years, members of UPSC, as well as other community members, have provided you with what I believe to be a tremendous amount of grace and patience. We have met with you, emailed you data, questions, and concerns. We have FOIA'd for information. We have spoken with you on the phone and in at-person meetings. We have invited you to our meetings. We have even peacefully protested your illegal enforcement of masks on our children during Mask Week. Whereas you just heard many children, including my 4, were subjected to isolation, segregation, and discrimination for choosing not to wear a medical prophylactic for a virus that only seriously affects less than 1% of the population and does more long-term damage than any protection you falsely continue to let people believe it provides. You know that though, because I watched personally as we hand delivered that data to you. The grace period is over, and as my grandfather taught me, adults need to be held accountable as well, especially those we elect to protect the best interests of our children. Unfortunately, with power comes great responsibility, and you have unsuccessfully fulfilled several responsibilities and violated your policies, including but not limited to, and I'll go as quickly as I can. Policy BDAA, your annual work plan, the suspension or appeal of a policy. The board may also suspend a policy on a 2/3 vote of the members present at a duly constituted meeting of the board, even if the change was not listed on the agenda of the meeting, which would include the meeting that you last held, where you did not revoke the policy, even though case numbers were down. To establish the basic structure for ethical board conduct, a board member shall honor the higher responsibility of his or her membership demands by doing the following, including placing children's interests above partisan or other political interests. Based on the information that we've received, that has not been the case. And if any parents are interested, they can email UPSC and we will help provide that to you. Also, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Denise Hilty.
I respectfully encourage each of you to have the intellectual curiosity and hold yourselves accountable to ask yourself, are specific policies truly making schools safer, preventing poor health outcomes, and/or optimizing physical, social, and emotional well-being? My husband and I take public health very seriously. After extensively reviewing scientific evidence and vetting our conclusions with the senior government virologist and others, we concluded masking our first grader did not provide a public health benefit and may harm the school community. I'm sure you have heard from many who have pointed out the large bodies of scientific evidence which appear to be ignored by this board that inconveniently point out certain policies being ineffective, like masking and quarantining healthy children. The impacts of these policies for some include developmental delays, anxiety, hundreds of school days lost, and more. In September, the board provided little transparency or communication as to how unmasked children, including our 6-year-old daughter, would be educated. For example, we were not told who would be supervising our child in an isolated proctor room. We called the school. They refused to tell us the name of the proctor and their qualifications. We were told the children would receive a Zoom link in their observation classroom and observe their classroom without interaction or personal instruction from their teacher. Clearly, a Zoom link does not qualify as an adequate education for a first grader, which is in violation of your oath of office. Emails asking very reasonable and appropriate questions to our daughter's teacher and school administrators were never answered. We also spoke at length in person with the CCSD Director of Elementary Education and were told he had no information on how our daughter would be educated. It was clear at that point, if our child was not going to wear a mask, her parents were not worthy of being communicated with, and she was apparently not worthy of an education. Many parents report they would prefer their child not wear a mask all day in school, but masking their children, they're masking their children because they fear discrimination and retaliation from school staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Amy Black.
Hi. Well, Denise and Victoria kind of summed up what I wanted to say. So I brought some notes, but my kids, I have 2 children in the Charleston County School District, and they also, I guess, survived what we call mask week now. The same thing that week, were isolated to a room, were denied one-on-one instruction with their teacher. I was not communicated with about where my children were. And I think it was day 3, they were asked to leave the school. So we moved here from another state to escape these unscientific mandates. My 2nd grader, this is actually his first year in-person school. And, you know, it's sad that we celebrate that. And here we are again, you know, dealing with these policies that they just don't make any sense. They really hurt the kids. I am there every day to take my kids to school. I have consoled mothers in the parking lot who are wrestling with their kindergartners to put on the mask, and the mother's crying and she knows it's wrong. She doesn't want to do it. One mother said, "I'm a single mom. I have no choice. I have to leave her here." So I guess I'm here for those parents that can't be here, that can't stand up for their kids. I've quit my job. I stay home with my kids, and I'm prepared to fight for the kids. It's very disappointing. And the kids, you know, I hear often how resilient kids are, you know, that I think that's something that maybe the people that make these decisions tell themselves to feel better, and they are resilient, but it's a shame that we've had to put them through this. And that's all. Thank you.
Next, we have Frank Baylock.
Hi, I'm standing up here today because I received mental health services while I was a student at CCSD. Now, maybe some of you would rather a different outcome take place, but I just want to emphasize how important that is to me personally. And it's why I pursued a career in child and adolescent anxiety research at MUSC, where I was able to, I want you to remember this name, study under Samuel M. Turner. And this person was a leader and a brilliant scientist who developed a lot of treatments for anxiety disorders and had a lot of validated assessment instruments that were used for treating anxiety disorders, just for one example. So I cite that as an example because I want you to think about as you have discussions about providing or doing something with mental health in the schools, that you base that decision on science and best practices that were established by scholars like Samuel M. Turner. I say that because I've read some of the proposals I've read associated with ESSER 3 use terms like mental health, but they use it very loosely. And it seems to be sort of undefined and very amorphous. So I would really encourage you to move forward with a firm operational definition of wraparound services. I think Communities and Schools provides an excellent specific operational definition of wraparound services, and that you focus on mental health services that are evidence-based, and that in addition to teachers, parents, and principals at the table when these decisions are made, that you also include psychiatrists, psychologists, and licensed clinical social workers. And at very last, I'd like to shout out to my principal at James Island Middle School, Franklin, the late Franklin McRae, who was the one who helped me out so I could be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Flannery.
Good evening. My name is Mark Flannery. I'm here to talk about the school mask policy, and especially since it seems like it's already being considered for reinstatement before we see what's happening. I spoke here last May. My position is still the same. I don't have any interest in debating on whether or not masks work. If I wanted to, I could show you dozens of studies that show that they don't, but that's not really my concern. And it doesn't matter because the burden of proof is not on me to prove that they don't. It is on those who enact the policy. The school board has never presented any evidence that masks in schools reduce community transmission. In fact, if you listen to the discussion just earlier, no one actually cited any evidence that masks on children prevent school spread or community transmission. But we're not unique here. No school board has ever done that because there isn't any. But that's not even the worst part. Let me ask you, where in any of your discussions have you ever addressed whether or not the benefits outweigh the harms? When have you ever asked, do these masks harm children in any way? It certainly wasn't discussed tonight. I know the answer. No one enacting or enforcing the mandate or anyone who favors masking our children has ever addressed this question. The only reason that's ever given, it's to keep children safe. But how do you know that it's keeping children safe if you haven't asked if it harms them? How can you even begin to consider a policy based just on numbers without considering the population, the children that it affects the most without even mentioning it? Personally, I don't need a study to know that putting masks on 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, teenagers for 8 hours a day for months on end causes deep psychological harms. We all love our children. I know you guys do. I do. Everyone here does. It seems that the school board is so certain that the mask policy does this, keeps children safe without addressing the harms that any reasonable person would easily recognize. If this does come up again, I do hope that the deleterious effect on children's psychological well-being and actual risk is
Thank you.
considered. Thank you.
Next, we have Kava Compton.
Hello, can y'all hear me okay? My name is Kava Compton, and the fact that we are going back and forth about when to drop the mask mandate or under what circumstances you will be reinstituting it makes it clear to me that you think that you have the legal authority to do so, to make these types of decisions. And I'm here to tell you that you do not. You continue to violate your oaths of office, and you continue to commit numerous federal and state criminal offenses. You have sold our children out for money in the name of ESSER funding. You have made backroom deals without our knowledge or consent. You are playing doctor and forcing our children to participate in medical experiments without medical licenses. You have instituted and perpetrated discrimination in our schools, and the list goes on and on. You must stop this immediately, if for no other reason than for your own self-protection from liability. Despite what your higher-ups are telling you, you are not protected from personal, criminal, or financial liability. If they are telling you otherwise, then they are lying to you. Just following orders or ignorance of the law is not a legal defense for your illegal actions, and it will not protect you in the court of law. I encourage you to protect yourselves and your families. Make the bullies at the top who are pushing you around take that liability on themselves. They will protect themselves, not you, when the season of accountability begins. I think you should think it over, pray about it, talk to your families. You are at a point of no return. Your decision will have long-ranging consequences for you, your families, and the future of CCSD. I encourage you to use prudence as you decide which side of the line you will stand on. Thank you very much.
Did, at any point during these public comments, Jennifer Hankey or Jessica Ziegler come into the room? Okay, well then that concludes the in-person portion of the public comments. The online comments were almost exclusively regarding face mask policy ADD, which was suspended at the beginning of this meeting. So Reverend Mack, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Waters. At this time now, we have the superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report this evening is in two parts, COVID update, Mr. Rory, and then I'll do a brief S3 update.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. So we've got our bottom line up front here on the first slide, and this is the changes presented by DHEC on the 22nd of February in their most recent guidance. We'll be managing COVID rates by school rather than by the district. We've got our data all set up to manage that. We'll be covering a two-week total, total by day. If we have less than 10% of the students and faculty combined, we can remain as is. We've lifted the test to stay program unless we exceed that two-week trend. Like I said, our dashboard will be modified as well. We'll show the total number of cases on the most recent day, the 14-day total, and the year to date. So we're prepared to institute this starting tomorrow. At this point, we do not have any schools near 10% positive. So we'll have all schools open tomorrow. We'll closely monitor that and determine if we have to go back to test to stay and contact tracing in any school that hits 10%. I did also want to point out, although not on the slide, we're getting prepared to reopen after hours use of our school facilities. We have maintained the exterior of our school facilities since the beginning of the pandemic, but we're preparing to allow outside use of our facilities after hours under the facility use program. And we'll come back to the board with a specific date for that in the future here. Next slide, please. We've got our summaries of the cases in South Carolina. I mentioned this earlier. All the counties are in medium at this point, dropping fast. The next slide shows the cases within the school district. The orange is staff, the blue are students. You can see on the far right bar, we've had 44 cases this past week. And that is the lowest rate since November timeframe. And so looking very good from that perspective. That's all I have, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you very much. So at the committee of the whole meeting in February, on February 14th, the staff presented to the board a plan that was under development to ensure that we effectively engage with our school communities around an ESSA $3. So that plan will be put into effect later this week. Our school communities will engage on the ESSA $3 around the vision of students reading on grade level around those three pillars that you see up here: rigorous grade level instruction, high quality teachers and leaders, and wraparound services. So over the next 2 or 3 days, staff will conclude, finalize the set of toolkit that includes a set of guidelines that we will issue to schools on Friday. That is, those guidelines, the process itself was developed in part with the assistance of 5 principals, 4 of the principals that were in the Reimagine Schools proposal and 1 other principal in D10. And so on Friday, then this coming Friday, March 4th, we will present the toolkits to our principals. That those toolkits will provide guidance, guidelines on how they are to engage with their communities. In the toolkits, we will lay out what's district's responsibility and what are the responsibilities of schools in their communities. So for example, at the district level, for core curriculum that will be developed and expected to be implemented district-wide, those would be developed under the guidance of the central office. Likewise, professional development associated with curriculum rollout. Another example would be the district office would approve a list of interventions that schools might engage with and with their students, as well as assessments. So those are 4 examples of the types of guidelines that would be contained in the toolkit that are central office or district level aspects. On the school-based side, the schools will be able to look at the pillar 3, which is wraparound services. They take a look at what type of services they think in each individual case in each school, in their communities, and their students. That would be the wraparound services that would be appropriate, and then they would select those and make those recommendations to central office staff, as well as certain staffing decisions would be made at the school level. So those guidelines will be distributed this coming Friday, and it will include an allocation, funding allocation target for each school community based on the number of students that are reading below grade level at this point in time. The timeline gives the schools a month to complete that the engagement and to report back to the central office on April 1st with the intent of being able to for the staff to present to the school board during the school board meeting in April what those decisions have been made. Again, the intent is to have the community schools to be able to align their plans with the goal of students reading on grade level by grade 5 around the 3 goals that were presented to the board back in on January 28th board meeting. So that concludes the update for this evening.
Are there any questions? Ms. Green?
Yes, Mr. Kennedy, will the schools make the selection of who they want to work with and that automatically happens? Or will the school's proposals be reviewed by somebody, or how does that work?
So the proposal, the school-based plans will be reviewed by central office staff, but they will have an opportunity to schools to take a look at the proposals that were submitted by the CBOs and to determine whether or not any of those proposals support their efforts. And then we would, in the central office, in conjunction with the team I mentioned a few minutes ago, would help review those and to help make decisions and recommendations.
Okay, Ms. Coates?
So I'm hearing 2 different words. I'm hearing decisions and recommendations. Is the board going to have a say in the implementation of these funds for these programs? Or is the central staff going to make that decision?
So recommendations will come to the school board during the April school board meeting.
Okay, any further questions? All right, we'll go to strategic education, item 8A.
Item 8A is a conversation about the academic calendar, which we've been soliciting public feedback for the last 2 weeks. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Woody, who's on the Zoom link.
Good evening. The public input survey closed today at noon. The results of that survey is that we had about 6,500 votes and about 700 comments. 2/3 of those votes were for option 2. That is the option that mirrors both DD2 and MASC. And so it is the recommendation that you approve option 2 with 1 revision. One of the comments pointed out a conflict with our AP exams. And so we recommend moving the May early release day from May 5th to May 12th to try to minimize that impact.
Anyone have any questions in regard to that? All right.
I like that motion.
Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve option 2 for the 22-23 calendar with moving the early release day from May 5th to May 12th.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Let the record reflect that Dr. Frazier have left. That motion passes. Item 8B.
Item 8D is the board's consideration of the Health Advisory Committee's recommendation. Ms. Cutt is available on the Zoom if there are additional questions from the board before you make a vote.
Okay. The item was included inside your packet. Are there any questions or is there a motion?
I have a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the recommendations set forth by the Health Advisory Committee for Heritage Keepers SRAE curriculum to remain on the district approved curriculum list of resources, sorry.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Ms. Coakley, how do you vote? Okay. Okay, that motion passes. All right, item 8C is an update on mental health services. Ms. Coker, are you?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I believe you received the presentation earlier. I don't know if it's going to go up or not, but I'll talk through it. So thank you again for asking us to come back and talk with you about an update on mental health and wellness for CCSD. As we discussed back in December, there are layers of mental health and wellness support that we need to consider across our schools, beginning with creating positive school climates and environments for all students, then moving on to tier 2 supports of groups and small groups for students that need additional support, and then ultimately direct one-on-one counseling for mental health support for students. So we do have all of those layers within the district. Since our presentation in December, our multi-departmental department team has been meeting each week. And again, that is multiple departments throughout learning services to review the supports for schools. We have an ongoing spreadsheet, but I'll talk about in a second. And we review the changes and fluctuations to mental health counselors, to school-based counselors each Monday morning. And when we meet, we look at the school's needs and we determine if we have new temporary employees, where their work assignments will be. We also review all of our grants and to see if any of those supports need to be moved around, as well as interns and some of the additional supports I'll talk about in a few minutes. We also talk about new and upcoming concerns. And so most recently are 2 concerns that came up in the last week. finding mental health supports for our undocumented students and students who need bilingual therapy support. So that is one of our newest quests, to find more supports for our undocumented students and our students who need bilingual. We also recognize an issue for the CCSD students in the Low Country Virtual Academy, that we did not have adequate supports for them. And so we have now started with a virtual counselor. One of our temporary employees starts tomorrow working with some of our Low Country virtual students. In the presentation, I did give you a sample of the chart that we're using to track all of the different things going on across our schools. So we are monitoring where calming rooms are in place or going in place, monitoring our social workers, supporting schools, our school-based counselors, our mental health professionals in our partnership with Department of Mental Health, our school psychologists, our temporary employees, which we've been adding over the last several weeks to support schools. We do have multiple interns working with us in social work, psychology, and school counseling, as well as some additional grants that we have funding for art therapy and Project Prevent coaches, and our partnership with communities and schools, as well as the grant with MUSC. So just a couple of examples of how this teamwork is going. And that's what we wanted to do today, is let you know that we are monitoring this every week and making adjustments. So for example, on the chart that I did share, Asher Creative Arts is a referral school for social work. So that means one of our social workers is not assigned there on a specific day. And they also had a vacancy for a mental health worker. And so we have assigned them to the art therapy grant. So 20 of their students will begin art therapy next week. And we worked with MUSC and the school team to institute that, and are very excited about that. We also are currently working on supports for Frierson. Their counselor is out, their school counselor is out, and there's also a vacancy for mental health. So we've adjusted the social work support to that school. And as I just got 3 new names cleared for temporary support, we'll be assigning one of those new temporary employees to Frierson. And just one other example would be West Ashley High School. We did have mental health there until November on site full time, and then that person left the mental health department. And so at that time, our team began working we automatically increased the social work services from 1 day to 2.5 days. And then in January, the school psychologist was assigned full time rather than part time to West Ashley. We worked to have 2 interns there, a social work intern and an intern to work with drug and alcohol, as well as a partnership with the Charleston Center to have someone from the Charleston Center on site. They are part of the MUSC grant, and we have a temporary licensed clinical counselor 2 days a week at the school at this time. So we're making those adjustments in real time. On Monday mornings, we look at our new staff, and then we move forward with those placements. The calming rooms, we have a model now that's been developed by school teams, and we will be offering several different options around the calming rooms. We have kits for schools where they don't have a particular room they can use, where they can be given to guidance counselors, school psychologists, even classroom teachers, so they have the materials. And then we also have a standardized list with materials and resources by elementary, middle, and high. And so schools can begin to request those, and we have schools in the process of requesting to put in the calming rooms. And those really attach to our overall data that we mentioned back in December for our younger students on how to self-manage. That was one of their lower areas in our climate survey. And then of course, for our middle and high schoolers, their sense of belonging, having the additional counselors on their sites and having a place to go when they need some support will definitely help with that. To date, we have 257 CCSD employees that work on mental health and wellness every day. We have 51 contractor employees through our various partnerships. To date, this school year, we're serving 2,088 students, and that includes with our partnership with CIS, our partnership with mental health, all of our contracted services, as well as our internal clinical counselors and social workers. In comparison to the 2019-2020 school year, by the end of the year, we have 2,193 students being supported. So we are on pace to definitely have more students receiving support as we go through this school year than we did 2 years ago. And so we want to just make sure that everyone knows that we really are focusing on this, and aside just from support to directly support students, we are continuing to offer professional development for our school teams to encourage those strong school environments around trauma-informed, restorative practices, crisis response, classroom management, and most recently adding in how to use the calming rooms and the calming kits. And then finally, we are in partnership with the FACE department, working on a website for parent resources, but we are putting out a couple of documents this week and next week. So parents have those resources in their hands, but then we will be developing a website for the various resources needed around mental health and wellness. There's some additional information that I provided to you around the specific positions, and I will send you an update in the board brief later this week with some other totals that we're adding in this week to our total services.
Okay, Ms. Coker, the tips to keep your child and others safe, how is that posted somewhere? Is each student given a handout or sent home with the parents? How's that done?
We're working with communications to have that sent out this week and we post it on the website, but our goal is to have a whole web page with the various resource links, but we will be getting that out to parents this week. Schools already have that document if they want to give it out, but we're going to be putting it on the website. It's on our internal site for schools to get to, and so we need to make it external.
So is there an opportunity to partner with an outside agency that may be able to provide mental health services via virtue in schools that may not have a physical individual or mental health counselor assigned to that particular school? Are there opportunities for that to where we can reach more students at a faster rate?
Well, we are already partnering with multiple mental health providers in the immediate area. So we work with MUSC, Communities and Schools does support, as Mr. Cooper said, across all the tiers. Mental health is constantly hiring. And then those temporary employees that we're hiring are licensed social workers and counselors. There are a couple other organizations that we're talking to see if they have some capacity to take on students as well. So we continue to explore that every week at every turn that we can find partners who have capacity. That is really the problem that we're running into, is some of our standing partners have waiting lists at this point in time. And so there is definitely a need for additional supports because even some of the people that we normally refer to currently have waiting lists.
Mm-hmm. So one final question. So the students are given these type of services, but are there any correlation with the parents being a part of this session as well? Or this just with the student?
That depends on what their treatment plan is, certainly. Our students who work with MUSC, the Department of Mental Health, and there definitely can be family sessions throughout that process with the students and the families. We've also offered with our partner Strengthening Families some parent support classes. We did a bilingual course this spring, had 15 families in the North area that attended, and that there is work around that. We also partner with NAMI, who has done multiple presentations to our parents in different schools around the stigmas of mental health and how to receive services and how to support students. So we are partnering with some other agencies around making sure parents have tools and resources. And then our licensed folks that we're contracting with do have the option to include parents in the therapy if the parent would like to do that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Dr. French.
Is it the Project Prevent grant that also provides services to teachers and staff? And how is that implemented?
The Department of Mental Health, if a staff member chooses to go there, they certainly can. We have an EAP with my group for staff. Mr. Bergman's department does the employee assistance program. We also just Friday rolled out a free wellness app to all staff in a partnership with Rethink Ed. So all staff members have the ability to download that app, and it has really great resources on it. So we do have 2 avenues right now. Plus, one of the temporary employees that we're contracting with specializes in adult crisis. And so we'll be adding her to the resources for our crisis team when we have crises in schools to work specifically with adults. And whenever we have a school crisis, we also have the crisis chaplains, which are available and come on site and support adults as well.
All right, any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Coker.
You're welcome.
All right, item 8D, Ms. Belcher.
Yes, sir. And I apologize for not being able to present that mental health presentation. It will be available for the public this evening, and also the tips for kids are available for the public this evening. So we encourage families to access that.
Okay.
So thank you for the opportunity to present on our MAP and our FAST Bridge results. Given feedback from board members, this is going to be the first of two presentations, given it is a fairly extensive presentation of data. We want to make sure that all board members have an opportunity to process it and review it. We also want to make sure that we're making as much public as we can, but a couple key considerations. So if Maggie, if you would go to the next slide, thank you so much. So this is what we believe to be the headlines of the data after spending some time with it. So just to make sure folks have the context, our students took the MAP test in the month of January. We had to extend the MAP window several times, given January was that time of year where a large number of students were out of school for different periods of time with the COVID, and a large number of faculty were out of school. The goal was to get above 85% of students completing the test within the testing window. So we're comparing students at a similar time of when they take the test. Our overall sense is, and the data will bear this out, that we're achieving at higher levels and experience less learning loss at most grade levels than similar urban districts and students who took the MAP test nationally. We're also outpacing similar urban districts in the nation on growing kids academically during the pandemic. And this holds true in both reading and math, with us experiencing slightly less learning loss in math than in reading. However, we did see a modest system-wide decline in performance from the fall to winter administration of both the MAP and the FastBridge in both reading and in math. We also continue to see less growth, resulting in lower achievement among our students of color, students in poverty, students with special needs, English language learners, and that is obviously a significant concern for us as a system. Going to the next slide, just as a reminder, we're going to cover at the very high level. The goal here tonight is to make sure you understand the information in front of you, not necessarily to spend extended time talking through it, but to make sure that we're reminding both the public and the board, many of you have seen this data multiple times, the differences between the assessments and their strengths and limitations on reporting on student achievement. So the MAP is a computer adaptive assessment, which means as you answer a question, you get an increasingly harder question until you hit a place where you can't answer them, and then it evens out. So it adjusts for individual student responses. The MAP allows us to see as a comparison group to other students, the norm reference group nationwide. So MAP has a normal group that we're comparing our results against. Achievement is how students are doing compared to similar students nationwide. And growth is a measure of students' progress between the last administration of the test and now. In the MAP test, the system also sets growth targets based on similar students. Where do you expect the students to grow by the next administration? And we track the extent to which those growth targets are met. As I said, I think it's important to realize that this was the semester where we had the highest number of students and staff members absent since we've had the pandemic. In addition to the academic impacts, as this board knows all too well, the prolonged nature of the pandemic is affecting the mental wellness of both our students and our staff. Throughout the presentation, when referring to demographic data, we use the group other. That is simply because those demographics is too small of a number of students for us to report on individually. So we have combined those groups together, which include Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native American, and students with 2 or more races. And finally, while in the presentation, we don't report on individual schools, there is individual school data, and we just label the data. Within board docs, which will be available for the public, we include 2 tables that do have the individual results of each school in MAP and in FastBridge for the board's review and the public's review. So the next few slides is data that we thought was helpful to put our results in context, because while there's a lot in this deck that we're certainly concerned about, it also is relative to the state of the nation right now after 2 years or so of a pandemic. So if you go to the next slide. So this slide is from the analysis that was completed by NWEA in partnership with ARE and the Harvard Education Group. We are part of a national study of what they call the Coalition of the Willing, of districts who've opted in to have our MAP results studied over the next 2 years, this year and next, to look specifically at the interventions that we put in place as part of COVID recovery to see what's working. The idea is we can actually track individual students that are involved in particular interventions like ninth graders in the Saga program and see to what extent that actually making a difference for kids. And we benefit from the learnings of other districts because if there's something that's particularly working that they're doing, we'll also know what that is. So we can think about whether it has implications for our work. This data shows the pink is Charleston County. The blue represents the similar urban districts that are involved in the study. And the yellow is the national data set. This is from the fall of 19 compared to the fall of 2021. We don't have the winter data yet in this study. Right now, we're just looking at what they gave us as a baseline just recently. So you can see where we fall relatively. On the side, you can see the demographic data broken out between free and reduced lunch. That's the FRPL, which is a surrogate for poverty nationally, racial group data, as well as urban, rural, and suburban. Those definitions all come from the National Education Statistics Group. So we're not setting those categories. Those categories are driven by the national, it's NCES. I'm forgetting, Ms. Roberts, do you know the name of the organization off the top of your head?
National Center of Education.
Thank you. I was close. Education statistics. Okay. I think the headline here is that our achievement levels started out higher on average than similar districts. And we are seeing dips, obviously in the 7th grade, we have a larger dip than other districts as well as at the middle school level. So that's a place of concern. But I think it's worth noting that in terms of the percentage of Black students in CCSD compared to the other two groups and the number of students qualifying for free or reduced lunch, or again, a surrogate for poverty, our poverty numbers are a little higher and our distribution of Black students are a little higher, which makes us feel like this is not results that are simply because of some of our students who are performing exceptionally well. It's an overall picture of the district. This is reading achievement. This is math. As you can see, we had less learning loss in math in the 4th and the 8th grade in general, and as compared to our peers. We think part of that is the investment that we've made in bridges and illustrative math so that we had a stronger core math curriculum. This is a measure of growth, again, fall to fall. Again, CCSD is the pink. So it's looking at 3rd grade to 5th grade growth, 4th, you get it. So again, this is at this point as a snapshot in time. It's comparing fall to fall, so it's not insight into where we are now. But it like the similar schools report that we showed the board in August, which was the report that NWEA runs, comparing similar schools with demographic data, poverty data to other schools like them nationally. We were generally in the green in that report across the board. That report is again posted in board docs for the board to review and also the public to review. And that again would reflect spring data of 2021. So I only share that context because while the rest of these results are places of real opportunity for us to improve, the challenge that we face, not just as a county, but as a nation, is that student achievement has been affected by the COVID epidemic. And we are playing decent defense on that effect. The challenge here is that we're not doing enough to move the needle in terms of accelerating instruction. I think we all hope we would be in COVID recovery. We are not in COVID recovery yet. We are still dealing with COVID, and last semester was one of our more challenging ones. The next series of results we'll go through at the high level just to make sure that we're providing context, just so folks know who's included, and we'll detail this in decks that go public and for next time. Meeting Street Schools is represented in the quadrant charts comparing schools by poverty level, but not in the NWA slides we just reviewed because Meeting Street administers its own NWA. They get those results directly to them, so NWEA can't include them in their reports. But moving forward, Meeting Street is included. North Charleston High School was not able to complete the map testing within the winter window. So while it's included in the longitudinal data in the fall of 21 data, it's not included in some of the comparison charts. Sorry, folks, I'll make sure I've covered all that I'm supposed to cover. I think I have.
So in the slides that follow, schools are grouped in 4 different categories: low poverty, low to mid poverty, mid-high poverty, and high poverty. For instance, you'll see schools in the 0 to 20% range, or what we would consider to be low poverty, grouped together for the purpose of comparing schools' data with like demographics, or what we often refer to as schools like ours. You'll also find in your packets a companion document to help you identify which schools fall into these similar group comparisons. We've seen these quadrant charts before when presenting our map data and have used them again here in order to provide a way to easily show the relationship between growth and achievement from fall 2021 to winter 2022. These charts are organized with 4 quadrants that are labeled to identify low or high achievement and low or high growth. Our schools are charted within these 4 quadrants by their specific median achievement percentile along the x-axis and by their median growth percentile along the y-axis. Each of the blue dots represents an individual school. Anything near that x-axis is considered to be in the average range in growth, and anything above the x-axis is considered to be above average in growth. Anything near the y-axis is considered to be in the range of average range of achievement, and anything beyond and to the right of the y-axis is considered to be above average in achievement. So overall, the schools in the low poverty range, which is what you're seeing here in reading and the math charts, fall into 2 quadrants: high achievement, high growth, or high achievement, low growth, with more schools clustering around average to above average growth. So in summary, our low poverty schools all are high achieving and are around average or above average in growth. So when we look at our next tier of schools, our low to mid poverty, 21 to 54% poverty, all schools fall again into 2 quadrants, either high achievement, high growth, or high achievement, low growth. Within these quadrants, all of these schools are considered high achieving, and most are situated on or closer to the x-axis, indicating average growth. We also see some schools rising above the x-axis, indicating that they are above average in growth. Our mid-high poverty schools fall into the higher poverty ranges of 55 to 79% poverty. As you can see, as poverty increases in a school, the fewer schools we are likely to see in the right of the quadrant, indicating that they are high achieving. In this tier, a few schools fall into high achievement, low growth, but most fall into low achievement, low growth. We do see a few schools on or above the x-axis in both reading and math, which tells us that although we may be seeing lower achievement, we're still making progress by growing at a higher rate than expected in these schools. We also see one school in this category showing both high achievement and high growth in reading. Our high poverty schools fall into the 80% or higher poverty range. In this tier, we see one school falling into high achievement, but with a little less than average growth. Most schools fall into that low achievement, low growth quadrant. However, we do see a few schools on or above that x-axis in both reading and math, which again tells us that although we may not be where we want to be in high achievement yet, we are growing kids faster than expected in some of these schools. You'll see an outlier school in the reading chart with extensive growth represented. I think it would be important to note that the population in this outlier is small. It's less than 15, just so you're aware. This slide represents reading and math achievement from this year's fall to winter by grade level. Trends and achievement hold true in what we see this fall to winter. Overall, all grade levels are achieving above the national average in reading and in math. On average, we see higher achievement in reading than in math, while we also see declines from fall to winter. This year, those declines, for the most part, are less than what we saw the same time last year. This slide shows students meeting growth targets in reading and math by grade level from fall to winter this year. By grade level, students are slightly less likely to meet growth targets compared to the national average in reading and math, with the exception of our 8th grade. In 8th grade, we meet the national average in math and slightly exceed this average in reading. Grades 4 through 6 do have lower percentages of students meeting growth targets than our other grade levels. And in reading, grade 3 has the fewest students meeting those growth targets in reading. This same information by grade level is also provided by demographics in the next 2 slides. The same trends and disparities we've seen historically continue to hold true. This first slide provides fall to winter growth for both reading and math. And this next slide provides fall to winter achievement by demographics.
So the next slide is simply a quick snapshot of the acceleration schools in both reading and math, comparing performance last year and this year. Essentially, they're staying similar with more dips again, like the other schools. I think it's worth calling out that while this is the overall aggregate data, there are bright spots in a lot of the individual acceleration schools that I would want to call out. So the Morningside community, for example, was of our 23 schools that took the middle school MAP test. It was in the top 5 in terms of meeting growth targets. And Simmons Pinckney, they hit over half of their growth targets in math at 51%. We saw that, I'm pleased to say the Burke principal wanted to let you all know that the Saga students are making strides in Algebra 1 classes. They actually had 71% of their students who are regularly meeting with their online tutors. And during our last benchmark assessment, the average in the school was above passing. And again, those are students who are at risk of failing algebra. So they're trending in the right direction. And then at Stone Oak Park, our African-American students there outpaced the students who are white in terms of meeting their growth goals, evidence that they're closing the achievement gap. So while overall progress is still a question, there gives some signals that some of the things that are happening on the ground are starting to work. For the next few slides, just at the highest level, Ms. Roberts, I'm just going to give the high level at this point, just so folks understand the difference between FastBridge and MAP. With FastBridge, this is a different measure. Maggie, can you go to the next slide if that's okay? We use this for our early childhood students. It is a shorter test because of the developmental appropriateness. So it also is a series of subtests that focus on early reading skills and learning risk. That's true in both math as well as in reading. We did compare students to the same status as previously talked about in terms of poverty. If we look at this particular chart, this gives you a good sense. These are individual school reports. So FastBridge measures low risk, that's the green. That means they're ready or on track. Some risk, which means they're approaching ready, that's yellow. And high risk, not yet ready. We obviously want to see fewer students in the red and more students in the green, and to a lesser extent, the yellow. We're comparing fall to winter in the next few charts. One thing to call out, because of the volume of testing, FastBridge's math was not required for our first grade students because they had to take the MAP test. So when you look at the math test, that reflects kindergarten results, not kindergarten and first grade. Going to the very end. So in the last slide, Maggie, on conclusions and next steps. So these are the conclusions that I've sort of highlighted before. There are some real promising signals. Midland Park and Mary Ford did an exceptional job in early childhood results. That does say that some of our early childhood work that started at Mary Ford and is now continuing at Midland Park, we're seeing some promising signals. And if you go to the next slide, this is what we believe we're going to continue to do for the rest of this year in terms of focusing particularly on middle schools, which underperformed on average, and early childhood, and making sure that we're closing those mental health gaps, but really staying the course in some of our investments because we're starting to see the signals that they're working, even as we double down on some of the ESSER strategy. We added the process that we go through when we get results. So the MAP window closed at the end of January. Ms. Roberts got the overall data sets in the first week of February. So then we go through an analysis to compare like groups, to compare over time, to dig in at particular school level data on demographics. So schools get their reports in both Fastbridge and MAP. We try to draw conclusions based on that within the leadership of the district. And then we try to organize that data in a way so that you can see all the analysis we've done, or most of it. So we are making certain conclusions and putting them up on the slide, but it allows the public to view whether we've made the right conclusions. I think one of our challenges, the reason the appendix is so long, is that to get to that point, to tell whether there's other signals or other things going on, takes a great deal of analysis. And the mid-year data is intended to be largely an interim strategy. Is this working? Is it not? Where do we have positive outliers? What can we learn from them? And where do we need to make sure that we're double down because we're not making enough progress? So there's always this balancing act between getting the data, analyzing it quickly, and being able to transition it for actionable results, because the intent is to do something different between now and the end of the year. I only mention that because one of the things I think that's always a challenge is that, are we sharing too much information or not enough? And I don't know if we've hit that right, but we've tried to show you what we've done so you can make your own judgments on that analysis. So that gives you a good sense. And then the hope would be we'd come back in March and dig deeper into the questions the board might have and whether the conclusions that we reached are questionable based on the data.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Felcher and Ms. Roberts. We will fast track this to our committee of the whole meeting, so we can take a deeper dive into the data. Board members, an opportunity for you to peruse the handout that has been given to you, and also you will find in board docs that we may be able to address more defining questions there at the committee of the whole meeting. We will allow at least an hour and 15 minutes so that we can make sure that we are not rushing through this process, but that we're asking questions relevant to the progress of our students within these assessments. Thank you again for the presentation.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
I have one question.
Okay.
So one thing that I would think we need to see is we also used semester funds and did some very targeted summer schools last year. So while I'm trying to figure out, we have 58 schools that are low growth in our district. If you look at those, if you add those up, I'm trying to figure out, did you see any growth because of the summer school that you did? And maybe that's something you could bring to the committee of the whole as well, because that was some very targeted, specific money designed to see growth. And I don't remember that we've ever gotten the spring to fall analyzed against the students who attended those programs that were designed to give them growth.
We can add that to the presentation for the March deck, but we do have that data, and the general issue is we did not see learning loss at all, and there's like a 1 percentile point growth in both. And that is, again, we were targeting the students at the bottom 15% in terms of student achievement at that point.
All right, thank you. All right, item 9A, I'm sorry, Dr. French. I'm sorry, Dr. French, and then Ms. Herrick, I'm sorry.
To follow up on that, would it be possible to do an analysis of students who attended the summer school and see if they had a difference in their growth from fall to winter? Because maybe the impact would have been longer term.
I will check on that, get back to you and answer the question within the final. If we can do it, we will do it.
And the other question I'm really concerned about that didn't feel like I could tease out of this data was, what percentage of our students are reading at grade level?
So this is the limitation of the MAP test, because it compares MAP against a norm reference group as a measure of achievement, not to a grade level standard.
So I don't, so I get that, but what testing data do we have that tells us that?
That's the SU Ready data.
So what does that tell us?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but Bobby, you just looked at that. We can find it and share it, but that's been what we've been looking at as we think about how to distribute some of the funding for ESSER3 is SE Ready results on the reading test for last year.
Okay.
Ms. Herrick?
You mentioned that North Charleston High didn't finish the MAP testing within the window.
Yes.
Will they retake it? What exactly does that mean? And why didn't they complete it in the window?
There was some communication, there was some miscommunication around the testing window, but also some of the challenges are the same challenges that a lot of our schools face in terms of just getting all the kids in.
Right.
They did test the students after, but the issue is we can't compare them because it's not the same time. So it means it's a different result, if that makes sense. It's as if the students took it in a different month.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any further questions? All right, item 9A.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the spring 2022 bond anticipation notes, et cetera, as it's outlined in this motion. It's pretty long, so.
Okay,
Second.
the motion is moved by Ms. Green, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 9B, fixed cost of ownership.
Chair, unless somebody has questions, I motion to approve the prioritized list of projects under the fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 23 project list as submitted.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Green, second by Ms. Coates. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, Ms. Darby, are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that passes. Item 9C is the monthly capital projects report that's included in your packet for information. Are there any questions in reference to that report? Item 9D is the monthly financial report that was included in your packet for information. Is there any questions in reference to that report? Item 10A has already been covered. Item 10B is the superintendent search. So from the previous meeting from January 24th, the board in discussion talked about the board officers meeting with Mr. Mazik in reference to the superintendent search. You have received tonight in your packet some handouts of some different firms that has been researched and out in the discussion in which we had. I'm going to allow Mr. Mazik to just briefly talk about them or share with in those discussions.
Sure. What I handed out was a few of the most premier executive search firms that have done some work in this area, and just some resume kind of information for your consideration. Just information for your consideration as you start considering a national search firm. It was my understanding that this board wanted to do a national search. These executive firms are ones that have been prevalent in doing those. Some of them have done the late searches and the recent searches, and some they're Orangeburg and some of the other districts in the state. So this information is just for your consideration as you begin to discuss how you want to go forward with the superintendent search. And once you decide on firms, it is, whether it's 2, 3, or 4, then we'll communicate with those firms to come in an executive session and kind of answer your questions on what you want and what you expect. And then from there, you can enter a contract with anyone that the board wishes to do so.
Can we ask that you peruse those documents that has been shared in your private time. Are there any questions?
So what are our next steps? Are you wanting the board to come back and kind of give the board officers an idea of which of these firms we're interested in discussing? Or we're interested in discussing all of them at a later time? What's the next steps you expect from us?
I was going to take guidance from the board.
So the packet that you have received here tonight is for information that has been shared and has been researched. The board members can take those information that has been shared and we can at our next, again, this is just for information tonight, and we can come back at our next meeting with a recommendation as to how we want to proceed.
So do you want us to pare these down, or are we just simply coming back to proceed with hiring a firm or not hiring a firm? Or do you want us to come back ready to say, we think these are firms we want to explore?
This is for information for board members to.
Yeah, I'm talking about going forward.
Yes, going forward. So, yeah, I want to reiterate, this is information for board members to review. However, we have not created next steps yet.
Okay.
As to how we're going to move forward. Yeah, that was something will be determined by the board. Tonight is just for information to get everyone acclimated to how this process is going to work moving forward. And these are some firms that has been presented. At our next meeting, we can talk about what next steps would look like in upcoming.
I just have a quick,
So, yeah, go ahead.
are we limited to considering these specific firms?
Absolutely not. So you are open to research and come back with any other firms that you may want to be considered. Ms. Green.
Mr. Chairman, it may be a good idea, or I would like to recommend maybe you consider appointing 3 members of the board to get the information and bring it so we aren't all talking about the same stuff, like maybe have everybody report their 3 people in addition to steps going forward, a recommendation that would come to the full board from maybe the officers or whomever.
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying?
I follow what you're saying. Absolutely.
This is
All right, I will take that into consideration. Absolutely. All right, any further questions? All right, our next upcoming board meeting is March 14th. That will be the committee of the whole meeting, and March 28th will be the regular board meeting. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. This meeting is officially adjourned at 7.